Welcome back, focused learners. So today's explainer unpacks the release notes for NSAuditor AI Enterprise 0.38.0, and honestly, this one is a massive shift for anyone who actually runs or defends these assessments. We're talking about fundamentally changing how security teams sit down with auditors. Now let's jump right into the deep end and set the scene. You know the drill. Every compliance audit has that single brutal moment of truth, the assessor's table. You slide a folder of evidence across that table, they crack it open, and the excruciating scrutiny begins. If you're a GRC lead, a security engineer, or the CISO who actually has to sign off on a compliance pack, you know this specific brand of pain perfectly well. You're sitting there waiting for three inevitable questions.
First up, the assessor's going to look at your report and ask, okay, what did you find? And look, every single compliance and security tool on the market answers this first question. It spits out a list of findings, maybe throws in a dashboard with some red and green charts. But as any experienced practitioner knows, that is literally just the baseline. It's the very beginning of a ruthless assessor's scrutiny. A list of findings doesn't prove your environment is secure. It just proves a scanner actually ran.
Then comes the second question, and this is where things usually start to sweat. What did you leave out and who approved that? And this is exactly where most tools just suddenly go completely quiet. In a typical setup, an exception or a suppression is just some name typed into a spreadsheet, right? But a name in a text file isn't evidence of anything. Most tools are completely unable to provide cryptographic proof of who explicitly approved those exceptions. When the assessor pokes at the weakest joints of your argument, silent exceptions are exactly what they're hunting for.
Then the trap finally snaps shut with the unanswerable third question, the one that leaves most tooling fully exposed during an evaluation. They ask, who produced this pack, and can anyone besides your vendor confirm it? This is the core problem NSAuditor AI Enterprise 0.38.0 was built to solve. Think about it. If you hand over a zip file of PDFs, how does the auditor actually know it wasn't edited? How do they know it wasn't generated by a compromised machine? If your vendor has to log into some SaaS portal to quote-unquote verify it, then the auditor is trusting the vendor, not you.
So the absolutely critical difference we need to establish here is between mere testimony and verifiable evidence. A pack that cannot prove its own authorship is testimony. It's just you saying, "Trust me, my tool said so." A pack that can prove its authorship is evidence. NSAuditor AI Enterprise 0.38.0 introduces evidence pack authorship signing, and it completely transforms this entire dynamic.
Let's break down how this works in daily practice, because the mechanics here are what actually matter. This release gives us two powerful commands. Step 1 is the compliance sign pack command, but listen closely because scope is everything here. It does not just blindly sign a directory. Let me say this clearly. A verified signature covers one framework's envelope and the artifacts it enumerates, and it is signed with an operator-held ED2559 key at an approval station. The authorship is totally relative to your own key custody. It's never a vendor attestation, it's not proof the scan ran, and it's not proof the findings are true. It's proof of exactly who authored the pack. Then, step 2 is Compliance Verify Pack. This establishes that authorship and, crucially, it rehashes every artifact the envelope enumerates against the disk.
This process highlights an incredible zero-trust discipline. Verification happens entirely away from the scanning fleet. Because signing requires an operator-held key at an isolated approval station, the scanning fleet itself stays completely keyless by design. Think about the implication there. If one of your scanning nodes is somehow compromised, that scanner cannot mint authorship. An attacker simply can't fake a clean evidence pack because they do not have the keys.
Now, here's a story that perfectly illustrates why hashing the artifacts matters. Let's say you edit exactly 1 byte of a covered report without even changing its file length. Run the verification again. The signature still reads verified. Why? Because the signature on the envelope itself is completely intact. A lazy verifier that just stopped at the signature would have wrongly called that pack clean, but NSAuditor doesn't stop. The artifact verdict fails and names the exact file that was tampered with. On the flip side, if someone tampers with the manifest instead, the verdict is a digest mismatch that deliberately accuses nobody, because a legitimately regenerated manifest hashes differently by construction. The tool flat out refuses to guess. Also, it supports 2 trust anchors, and the tool explicitly tells you which one it used. If you try supplying both, it refuses, rather than silently resolving it. And all of this is verifiable completely offline using standard OpenSSL. You don't need anything of ours to prove it.
So naturally, we have to talk about exit states. Because the rules of trust anchors are strict, there are 3 possible states: verified, a violation, and could not measure. That third state is absolutely vital. If you hand over an unsigned pack,
Or if a registry member has no key material, the tool reports could not measure. It is never, ever reported as a failure. Why? Because telling an auditor your evidence failed verification, when the reality is that nothing was checked, sends them hunting for a forgery that never actually happened. Honesty and verification is the whole game here.
Okay, let's pivot from the audit table to the daily reality of the vulnerability queue. When you're staring down 40 critical vulnerabilities and your engineering team can only patch 6 of them this week, severity alone is practically useless. CVSS is just a counterfactual. NSAuditor solves this by joining CISA KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities, and first EPSS, the exploit prediction scoring system, at scan time. This means an actively exploited KEV-listed medium vulnerability outright outranks an unexploited critical. And crucially, the catalog date travels with the finding, so you know exactly how fresh that intelligence is.
Now, I want you to notice the exact naming of these triage bands: known_exploited, elevated, baseline. Not active, not probable, not unlikely. This flat-out refusal to dramatize the band names is where the platform's credibility comes from. A triage label should state exactly what is known, no more, no less. Plus, absolutely no exploit data ships with the tool itself. Both local stores fail closed when stale. An out-of-date catalog will withdraw a negative rather than asserting one, which means it will never dangerously report not exploited, just because your list happens to be a month old.
Let's tie this rigor back to those silent exceptions we talked about earlier. In this platform, every compliance report checks each suppression approval signature against the approver's registered key material. For approvers whose registry entry carries key material, it cryptographically proves the explicit approval. And just like the envelope verification, if an approver's registry entry has no key material, a missing verdict means not checked. It never means failed. That condition rides the sentence to guarantee absolute transparency with your assessor.
What's wild is how efficient this is at scale. One single scan maps to 7 different frameworks in parallel. But the real selling point isn't the coverage, it's the out-of-scope column. The tool explicitly lists every single control it cannot honestly evidence, like physical security guards or HR paperwork, and it gives a clear reason why. It doesn't pretend to measure things an infrastructure scanner literally cannot see. The perfect example of this strict honesty is their stance on GDPR. NSAuditor maps to GDPR Article 32, but it strictly caps the claim. It is claimed as security of processing infrastructure substrate only. It is never pitched as comprehensive GDPR compliance. The other 98 articles are completely operator-side and out of scope by design. This is how you avoid the compliance snake oil that buyers are so exhausted by.
And that engineering philosophy is summed up brilliantly by this core idea. A pack with silent holes is found out by the assessor, not by you. If evidence collection fails mid-scan, maybe because of a truncated listing or an access denied error, the tool doesn't silently pass the control. It fails closed into disclosed gaps. That refusal to guess builds massive, unshakable trust with your auditor because they know a clean line actually means it was checked.
So trust is the foundation, and that absolutely extends to your raw data. That number 17 represents the zero data exfiltration architecture. And this isn't some marketing slogan, it is a published register of exactly 17 enumerated egress paths. Every way a byte could leave is named and strictly opt-in or off. Even the AI analysis runs with the customer's own API keys, and payloads are thoroughly redacted at a single choke point before ever leaving. In fact, the only outbound evidence path in the whole system is the opt-in GRC push. For practitioners in highly secure environments, the deployment options are rock solid: NPM, the distroless AMD 64 container on AWS Marketplace, and Cloud Desktop over MCP. The delivery vehicle is a restricted, dependency-complete offline bundle proven to install with the network interface completely down. You walk the data across the gap yourself. And when you do, it is crucial to know that the data carry with feed bundle and feed import is integrity checked, not authenticated. It runs totally offline with offline license validation and local CVE matching. Because of these strict operational boundaries, I want to deliver this exact verbatim sentence direct from the source. NSAuditor's air-gapped operation is compatible with the FedRAMP, DFARS, CMMC threat model where SaaS data flow is prohibited. We don't claim to make you authorized or certified. We just fit exactly into the strict threat model your federal contractor environment demands. And to round out these verifiable evidence controls, if your audit requires time attestation, RFC 3161 trusted timestamps are available.
But honoring that strict philosophy, they are opt-in with no default, ever. You point the tool at an authority you choose, and each artifact gets a token your auditor can independently verify. You stay entirely in control.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We started at the assessor's table, looking at the crucial difference between unverified testimony and verifiable evidence. And hopefully you see now that this isn't just a slogan. A pack that clearly states what it did not check, discloses every single gap, proves cryptographically who approved every exception, and proves exactly who produced it. That is a pack that survives an assessor. So, my challenge to you is this. Look critically at the process you rely on right now. When the auditor asks those hard questions, do you have evidence or just testimony? To step up to verifiable compliance, visit https://www.nsauditor.com/AI/enterprise. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.